I definitely am not a pro at this. How about that?
I don't know anybody that is.
In fact, funny enough, before we started these, I had never even hosted a live Zoom. I had never hosted a Zoom meeting, or I mean, I've been on some, but for me to actually have to host it, no way. And I was on one yesterday, a Zoom call yesterday, that was awesome. The way that they like engaged people and put polls up, for different voting. One of the questions they asked was, what's your favorite part about these endless Zoom meetings? And one of the answers was putting the businesses that make pants out of business because you're no longer wearing pants during your Zoom call.
Sure.
It was awesome. Well, anyways, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As you join, say hello. Hi, Dawn. Hi, Steve. Thank you very much. And welcome, Scott. Thanks for joining us today. I'm glad to have you on and excited to introduce you to all of our listeners. But for those of you that don't know Scott, you kind of play a dual role with Success in Education and over at METT, right? Before we dive into METT, I'd love to hear what you do over at Success in Education and a little bit about your golf tournament yesterday.
Yeah, thank you. So my previous life has been in the ed tech space, and I'll emphasize tech just because that's kind of been the thing that helps me come alive and feel like I'm solving problems. With tech, you can make assumptions and test those assumptions so much quicker than when it goes to market, that you're actually able to iterate and pivot before you go live. And so that's what I love about tech. And in education, we needed to be able to make assumptions about how education would change. And we're all seeing that the ROI on traditional education is not as strong as it once was. And certifications and stackable credentials is really our future. And so with that in mind, I've started a couple of companies. I exited from my company, Bottega, and then transitioned over to a partnership that we had with Success in Education, specifically educating kids in coding, because we believe fundamentally that kids should be having these access to education in junior high and high school, so that by the time that they finish their high school, education, that they have the ability to move right into a role. And so Success in Education, being a 501c3, adopted that strategy of, hey, we can give kids more opportunities from the earliest with Road to Success in teaching literacy and reading comprehension, to the incentive-based education with Keys to Success. And then Code and Build to Success are programs that focus specifically on industries that need a lot of people and training that is specific to a skill rather than a theory. So
would those be more like our trade, like electrical and mason or construction industry?
Yeah, Build to Success meets exactly what you just said. And then Code to Success is computer science. So I oversee the Code to Success program. And we got to have a golf tournament yesterday and get some people out of their house. And it was great. It was an awesome tournament and good to see everybody out. So.
Well, and for those who haven't been to the tournament, it's the holes. How many holes have the big 8-inch? It's a hole-in-one tournament. And each hole has 3 8-inch holes or cups. And so if your ball lands in one of the holes, you win a 1-year lease on some pretty awesome cars.
Yeah, we gave away 6 cars yesterday.
Yeah.
2 trucks, Camaro, a Land Rover Defender, a Fiat.
Awesome.
So every hole has those 8-inch cups, 3 of them. So 18 holes. It's a par 3 course, so we start generally in the middle of the hole, and it's a ton of fun.
It's so fun. The way you guys structure your course. In fact, anytime anybody says I'm going to do a golf tournament, I'm like, wait a minute. Is it anything like the Keys to Success or the Second Education? Because it's fun. And Shields, I'm going to give a shout out. They always do a great job in coming out the way that they structure their sponsorship on their whole. It's fun. It's very good. So fun. I'm bummed I missed it, but I had to get done, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, and the next event that we have, and I don't know if you've ever been to Fishing the Green, but we fly everybody up to Duchesne and fish the Flaming Gorge. So if there's any fishing enthusiasts, let me know, because we've got some open boats. So.
Yes. Well, I'm excited. I actually would love to inquire about that because I think it's the way that you guys have set up your platform. Rick's done such a good job, even out at Wasatch Wing and Clay, being able to utilize events and networking and actual experiences to build relationships that then grow the foundation, right? That then educate more kids and provide more resources. So, did I lose you? Steve, I'm with you. I think we lost Scott. Scott, I'm going to kick you off. If you can hear me, come back in. Let's see, kick him from the studio. Sorry. Steve, I'm with you. I'm not very good at golf, and people always say for as long as I should have golfed that I should be really good, but I've got a nasty right swing. We also are going to be putting together another shooting event while we wait for Scott to come back on, sponsored by Now CFO in September. And so just like we did last time out at Wasatch Wing and Clay, in September, we're going to be doing the same thing. So message me or send me a note on our live here, invite your guests or invite other people. We'll get invites sent out. I have actually the link for that now. I know, Tim, I need you to come back on here too. Scott, you made it. You froze.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was seeing you freezing and I'm like, wait, what's going on here? So glad we got back in.
Okay, so good. Well, congrats on the tournament. I'm glad it went well. If there's anything we can do, it's a topic that we're super passionate about also. I think that especially the building side being our trade needs a lot of attention. And with the hemp industry specifically and the sustainability and economic development, I'd love to see where we could collaborate and really develop that as well. I'm interested in getting as many of these kids' hands on hemp as I can because they'll innovate and they'll change the world with it. So I'm pretty excited about that. So tell me about METT. You're a partner at METT. How'd you get into the industry? How'd you go from the cannabis space or from the ed tech space into the cannabis space?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the question. So with METT, it was introduced to me by a friend, and I'm a farm kid from Idaho, grew up on a potato farm, and the question that they had proposed to me was, hey, can you go and find farmers? Because Idaho is about to open up and legalize, hemp. And I said, yeah, sure. I know a lot of farmers. And Idaho, of course, didn't pass. And this is at the beginning of 2019. But I have one of my best friends and one of my partners, Mark Pittard. He is the son-in-law to a farm of 4,000 acres in Nissa, Oregon, excuse me. So it's just over the Idaho border. And he has brokered onions for Hawaii Produce for 11 years. So he knows the commodities. He understands how to place, high volume products into buyers like Costco, Winco, Albertsons, Walmart, and really approach the industry from that vantage point. So I knew that having Mark as a partner was so valuable because he understood commodities and he understood brokering. Our other partner, Evan Pack, I've grown up with him since we were like 2-3 years old. And he's a lawyer by trade or lawyer by education and currently is over at Vivint Solar in their operations. So he's a VP of operations and he knows how to scale businesses. He's one of the main reasons that Vivint Solar just did what Vivint Solar did with Sunrun, because he established a program for companies to be affiliates and to be able to grow those models in different markets and with different companies, different price points. So he's very, very brilliant. And I approach the industry from a technical side. And so everything that I've wanted to do in the agri-tech space includes traceability and compliance and really bringing more legitimacy to, I think, a cobbled process, just based on our experience with many of the companies. We're all trying to just go at a pace that matches the craziness of the environment economically. But oftentimes we miss steps, and we've missed those steps ourselves. But that's why we have a lawyer as a partner to kind of pull us back in and say, hey guys, we can't do that. So that's kind of our entry point into the market, was late 2018, early 2019.
What made you realize that it was moving into it, or what I heard you say, I guess, is by bringing on somebody that's very familiar in the commodity space, you're very aware or familiar or knew it was moving into that. What made you realize that hemp is moving that direction?
Yeah, so I've always been an early adopter and feel like hemp, as I understood it, had a capability of doing incredible things. I'll be honest, I was pretty ignorant to what it could do. And when I first heard about it, I was like, well, that's probably not something I'm interested in. But as I did my own research, as I did my own kind of vetting process, I learned the incredible plant and what it can do, and how the products that we know of today can be benefited, how our environment and our soil, and how we can solve problems that family members that I've had have dealt with from an opiate standpoint, or from, trying to get pain relief or some type of addiction recovery. And so we could go on for days at all of the things that hemp does and solves. And from my perspective, if we can add in some technical guiding principle of this is the traceability, this is really what you think it is, I think that we would all be benefited, because I think the bad players would go away. And I think the good players and the farmers who grow a good crop would be rewarded. So that's one of our whys.
I like it. I like it. So tell me about where you are as a company now compared to where you've been.
Yeah, for the last 18 months, we've gotten our trash kicked. I will say that. I mean, we rushed in and we grew 500 acres. And part of that was within a partnership, and we put a lot of reliance on some partners that are yet to come through, but they're really making good strides, we'll say that. And so part of the challenge was doing a farm acreage. So with that 500, we did 400 acres, and we harvested wet. And we inoculated it and put it into ag bags. And they've been in ag bags since October of last year. Now, the incredible thing is the CBD percentages have held. We haven't gotten hot. And the plant is very healthy. Because of the wet nature and the inoculation, it gets a little bit like in a brick form. But go ahead.
I have a maybe stupid question. What's it mean to inoculate it?
So it's a process that puts in moisture and oxygen and essentially bonds it or seals it. Like, think about like a mummification process. You essentially wrap the hemp in such a way where the moisture is contained, but it's not molding and rotting. So no, it's a great question.
Okay.
But we've now proven that for nearly 10 months, we can do industrial type growth with storage that makes sense. Because on the other 100 acres, we've milled it and we've gotten it, we harvested dry. And then we did the process of, your typical grinding and milling it, and have it in ag bags in a controlled building for temperature. And we've seen a similar scenario. We're not losing on our CBD percentages. We will lose a little bit, but it's not like I've heard in some of the horror stories. But it's also because we have it in a controlled area where it stays at about a 72 degree, and there's airflow all the time. So we had the capacity with a 4,000 acre farm to be able to make those adjustments on the fly. Unfortunately, that's not what everybody had available to them. And all of us have had those learning experiences, but I would have told you last year at this time that we were going to be hitting it big, and in many ways we probably approached it in a gold rush type of a standpoint, but we're also stubborn enough that we're going to make it work. And so we've seen great revenue come from flower that we've sold. We did 35,000 pounds of extraction with ethanol down in Colorado, and have oil distillate, isolate, and of course lots of biomass. But we're going to be patient. We're going to hold. We're not panicking, and so we're not rushing to the market to just dump everything we have. Because in my experience in business, there's a demand and a supply. And right now we're kind of riding those roller coasters. But I think by fall, we're really going to see an interesting spike in demand. And I think the supply will be low enough that people can start seeing an uptick in what they can sell their products for.
Why do you think we're going to see a spike? What's your perception?
I love data, and so I always go to the data. And in just the Mohawk County in Nissa, Oregon, last year there was 35,000 acres, or in Oregon, sorry, 35,000 acres last year growing in Oregon based on what was licensed. This year, you're really only going to see about 5,000 acres grown in Oregon. And you had a lot of failure. I mean, particular alone in Utah, right? What was a 90% failure rate? And so when you start looking and stacking up the farmers who did it last year, who were early adopters, and who now this year are probably going to hold off and do alfalfa and maybe wait and see, just simple economics, I think that even with the additional states that are being added, I think that they're going to unfortunately repeat a lot of what we did last year in Utah. And some of those growing pains, which is if I grow it, they'll come. Kind of like the old adage of like, hey, if I build it, they'll come. And that's not the case in business. So if you don't have a tie to extraction, farmers are in trouble. And so that's where we've really tried to message to farms, don't bite off more than you can chew, and don't also put yourself in a scenario that you don't already have contracted pricing for extraction with a time frame, because you're thinking that you're going to get paid off as soon as you sell your biomass, but generally that's not the case. So
Tim has a really good statement real quick, and then I've got a question for you. Wondering if you've watched the Hemp is Back documentary. It talks exactly about what we're mentioning or what we're talking about. It was produced out of Oregon. A big group of guys got together, a group of businesses got together and produced a documentary that talks about the highs and the lows. I shared it earlier. I'll send you the link because it's
please. Cool. I would love to see it, and thank you for sharing.
An hour long. And then he said Oregon failed huge last year, and still farmers are doing the same thing that they did last year, already repeating the same failures.
Yep.
Why is that? What do you think's happening? Why do you think that? I have a theory, and I compare it to technology, right? When computers first came out, everybody went out and bought this computer, or TVs. Remember when a 50-inch TV cost $4,000, or a computer that you bought was huge, and then 6 months later, the neighbor next to us bought a computer, and theirs was half the size and was twice as fast and half the cost. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening in this industry, especially in the extraction and the processing piece. Because you get these farmers that went in and grew, they have a bunch of biomass, like you said, they bring it to the extraction, and we had a big bottleneck in extraction for a little while. So then a whole bunch more people went in and they amped up how much they could produce and size and quantity and so forth. And then technology changed, and then different technology comes out. You get water extraction that's out, or you get, it's this ebb and flow and a lot of hiccups. And I admire these businesses that have been able to ride it out. And it's always interesting to me when you hear these people rag on or almost complain about some of these big businesses that have gone big and then failed. With nobody could have predicted what was going to happen. Nobody could have predicted that we had this huge demand for product, and then the FDA changes their rules and hold up, supply chains cut, right? Or that those orders are put on hold. And as we merge with more industries, or we have industries like dairy, or the commodities, or the agriculture, that combine with the cannabis and hemp space, their technology is going to come over, right? And so we see that more and more. And
yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, because I do think that technological advances will always make adjustments in an industry, especially with hemp. It's so much still in its infancy. And so you have many people who will claim CO2 is the best thing. There's others that will say ethanol is the best and butane's like, again, water soluble is the best, but at the same time, I don't know if it matters so much right now in its infancy. We have a water soluble machine on the farm, and we know that there is something there. But at the same time, based on what people are pricing and buying oil at and buying distillate at, I mean, at this point, I don't know if you're getting the bumps in value that maybe we would hope that new type of technology. And so part of it is a technology challenge and a technology reality that things are going to continually change because we are in our infancy. But I'll also tell you another point of view. I remember, back in the 80s, potatoes were in the bucket. But yet every potato farmer I knew continued to grow potatoes. And the question was, well, why? Well, that's all they knew. And they're going to make it work until they can't make it work. Until the bank cuts them off, they are going to do what they know. And so from a farming perspective, and with the huge upside available, farmers are going to continue to grow and continue to try to make this work, even if they had a failure the year before. And so I don't suspect that it will ever die off completely. And the thing that I admire most about farmers is their will to make it work. And they will get better and they will make it work. And I appreciate the Forbes article you posted about hemp specifically. And I agree 100%. I mean, we haven't even tapped the surface on what hemp will do, from the items that we buy in the grocery store to the things that are used to build homes. And we're not even scratching the surface, but we also have the supply chain set up to make that work in big ways. So I believe that risk and reward, or risk versus reward, will apply to the hemp industry just like it does to many other industries. And those who are willing to put up the risk are going to be rewarded at some point.
When we talk about what we need, by the way, hi, Ryan.
Hey, Scott, sorry for being 30 minutes late.
That's okay.
Don't worry about it.
I got on a call that just did not stop.
So, that's okay. We obviously didn't wait for you.
Well, I'm glad you didn't.
Well,
I wouldn't have expected you to wait anyway.
No, don't worry. Thanks, Brian.
I'm as you know, really passionate about the opportunity that is outside of CBD. CBD is one little piece, and more people, I think, are starting to see what else is available. Are you guys growing industrial hemp? Did you guys grow any?
This year or last year?
At all, have you?
Yeah, we did both years. Okay. So we're a big believer in testing and doing a lot of R&D. And so we have some high growth population where we're planting 10,000 plants per acre and doing it in a mindset to where we can say, hey, when industrial hemp comes on full steam, we'll be able to do that because we have a ton of seeds. We have a seed machine that actually pulls from our, some of the more male populated acreage. And we'll pull that seed out and we'll put it through a sexting and a feminization process and, clone the seeds and the strands that we like. And so for us, we're going to fail fast. And part of our strategy is to learn the industrial hemp and do it better than anybody else so that when it's ready, we're ready.
It's here. Listen. I can't believe I actually spoke with a young lady who has a mill, hemp mill in North Carolina, and she's looking to expand. But right now they are buying from another country their industrial hemp because they do not have suppliers, right? And I know that Patagonia is the same way, Levi is the same way. When you said something earlier that build it and they will come. I really believe that this is the case in the industrial manufacturing side. I don't believe that that's the case in the farming side, right? It's just like if I'm growing tomatoes and I'm like, I'm going to grow tomatoes because it's the first thing, everybody's going to buy it, you know? Well, tomatoes rot, you know, our product molds, or hemp molds, you know, just like if it's wet, or alfalfa, if you don't have somewhere to take it or mail or take care of it, it's a bad product. I believe now that if we get our manufacturing facilities in place and built, you know, and I want to know where are those investors, where are those people, where are the banks, where are the insurance companies that we can, you know, pull together to facilitate those manufacturing facilities? Because as soon as they're being built, I mean, just like you said, how many plants do you plant an acre, and how much easier is it to grow, and what's the value of it on the or the carbon footprint versus alfalfa or water used, and the ease at which it is to grow compared to when you're growing for flour. You know, industrial hemp is, for those that are listening and maybe don't know, industrial hemp looks more like a bamboo, where hemp grown for flour or extraction is looks more like a cannabis plant or a bush, right? Yeah. So I'm curious, what's your opinion on build it and they will come in this scenario?
I would actually agree with you. To my earlier statement, I think you adequately put it into the category of farming, that, you know, farmers can't take that type of a mindset to build it and they will come, or grow it and they will come. But to your point, I do believe that if we start making those industrial type moves with manufacturing, I would tend to agree with you.
And I also, you said something earlier, that those that take the risk are who are rewarded. And right now, I'm going to say this again, and I say it with a lot of passion. If your company is not considering hemp in some form or fashion, you're behind the game, you know. And if that comes down to technology, I mean, graphing and batteries and servers, I mean, in everything involved is that we, you know, what we eat off of is tech related. And so I think that it's going to be those that put the first manufacturing facilities in will reap a lot of benefits, and we'll be able to serve a lot of our farmers. You know, it relieves a lot of that risk then if we in the United States or within a region have ability to process their product and process it, not just an extraction. It's two different processing, right? So anyways, that's where I see. What are your thoughts about your moving forward? Where do you see METT going in the future, knowing that a lot of your focus has been on extraction and the health and wellness side, or the products for consumption, I guess?
Yeah, well, a lot of our decisions are just based on our reality as a business. And so we still have, we'll say, 450 acres of product that needs to be either sold in its biomass form or taken to oil. Again, with that comment that I made earlier, that we can afford to be patient. We're not dumping our product, and we won't. Just because we do have buyers, it's just going to take some time to get through all of that product. And I'm hoping that with a favorable, you know, legislation movement in September, that we can get this through the House and Senate and start seeing this in a consumable, because we're fortunate because of our other commodities that we can essentially embed like an MSA strategy, where we just attach our hemp into what's already being sold in form of onions, asparagus, and so on and so forth. So we're going to continue that strategy, which is large placement for the purpose of big buyers. And we have the product ready for that. But what we also see is that our flower has performed very well, particularly our Bubba Kush. And we're going to continue to follow that strategy, mainly because we've seen it work and we've seen the revenue outcome from it. And so we planted 5 acres of Bubba Kush, trying to be as forward thinking as possible. We also have planted 3 acres of CBG, in the field, and then we have another 10,000 square feet in a greenhouse. And so we're really banking on flower holding strong, but we did another 43 acres of CBD. So again, the just the typical oil grown CBD, and then we've got a couple of acres of industrial. And so
I want to have a talk. I want to plant more industrial. I'm on a mission. Yeah. I've got to supply to.
What are you growing in your greenhouses right now, Scott?
Sorry, what was that?
What are you doing in your greenhouses right now? Just CBD? Or are you doing other, or is that where your R&D is mostly?
Yeah. So that's our CBD and CBG, and there's a fair amount of cloning that we're doing right now. But we found that we had quite a bit of seed. Like we have 20,000 pounds of seed, and it's going through the process of feminizing it, sexting it, and getting it to where we can grow it for oil's sake. But again, for the purpose of fiber, we'll plant those seeds in the ground, and it really won't matter whether it's male or female. We're essentially utilizing it for the stalk and stem.
For the stalk and stem anyway.
What's the solution, or have you had any problems with the growth of industrial hemp next to your flower?
We haven't seen it, and interestingly enough, in the Nissa area, there's a lot of hops farms, and so you've already got a great setup for the kind of the scenario to where industrial hemp can be grown quite easily. And so with the vineyards that are over in that area, with the hops growers over in that areas, I mean, for us right now, we're going to let it go 8-9 feet, and then we're going to chop it down. But in the future, we see it getting much higher, but with the proper structure in place, based on a good strand. So this year is testing, making sure that the strand is right, and then making sure that our strategy and fulfillment is correct. But once we nail that, then again, we kind of believe in the whole nail it and scale it model. So
yeah. What do you question for the greenhouse? What size your greenhouse is?
So we have 6,000 square feet on the farm, and then we have another 10,000 square feet with a partnership that we have in Utah.
And then there was another question on here. Let's see, from Tim, wondering what your percent of your Bubba Kush came in at, your CBD levels of your Bubba Kush and of your hemp flower. What do you guys average growing?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. Our CBD is coming in about 14-15%, and I will tell you that we're hot in many cases. It's just something that we'll try to do better next year, but it is hot.
You know, I'm really intrigued and interested in getting a system in place that verifies intent. Right? As you're doing R&D and bringing in new strains, there has to be some sort of support for our farmers where they can track intent, right? So they know that, hey, if it spikes high at this week and gets them to 1% versus 9%, right? There's got to be something that protects our farmers to something in place. I'm interested in the tech side of that. We have a gentleman that's working really close to do a lot of this batch tracking. Tell me a little bit about the specifics of your technology.
Yeah, so our technology really is more approaching the growth, sustainability, and compliance when we're looking at like soil sampling, right? With the contracts that we have with some of these bigger, like your Walmarts and Costco's, they want to know down to the square foot where that product came from. Mainly because if there's a recall, they need to be able to put it into a specific area and, get all of that, we'll call batch recalled appropriately. So from that perspective, we do all of the panel testing. The panel testing is put into what we call tracks or squares. And so it's quality down to the square foot. What we've been endeavoring to build is a marketplace that connects into that. And so as you go from seed and genetics to planting, that you have not only your panel tests, but you also have your C of A's. And there's a chain of custody all the way through to where your buyers enter the picture, right? And buyers can be extraction facilities, they can be manufacturers, they can be, dispensaries, they can be even your individual consumer. But all of them should be able to see that traceability all the way back to the soil. And that's our belief. And again, your early adopters, they're not going to hold that stingent type of a, hey, I'm not going to buy this unless I know where it came from. But that is what we're banking on, is the future of the industry, that people won't make those decisions unless they can be educated for the process. And back to your forgiveness aspect of what we do to help farmers, I think Oregon has enacted a great law, which they'll actually go up to 0.35 on the THC scale. So it gives us a little bit of a buffer. And truthfully, we didn't even know what we were doing with flower last year. We just found ourselves in a scenario where we had flower and it was performing well. And so we decided to take it off and trim it. And we made lots of mistakes, and our flower probably looked pretty ridiculous up front. But we've gotten to a flow where we have some very consistent and very good flower. And so we've got, rather than the spot buy scenario that sometimes gets us also frustrated, we've got continual buyers who are coming in on a monthly basis. And that's where we're looking to build our business, is through sustainability, and you're going to get the same consistency every time.
I want to address something you said earlier, that you're banking on the consumer wanting to make sure they understand and know where their product comes from before they buy it. And I'm going to flip it even more to, as a business, until that risk is mitigated, they're not going to put it out, right? And so if you get big companies like these big drink companies, without a lot of names, right? They want to put, say, CBD in their drink, and they now have a botulism positive or a salmonella in their test. Until they know they can track back to where that came from and eliminate the risk from them, they can't move forward. And so until this piece is filled, and I've been really impressed. There's some really impressive technology out there that I'd love to connect you with, that I think that it'd be a great connection. Definitely worth the conversation, because it's involved in this exactly, and kind of coupling maybe what Hemp Batch Tracker is doing with something you're doing. It may be worth it. But so I'll make a connection. So yeah, I definitely think that that's something to consider, is, why isn't it everywhere? Well, because the technology just hasn't caught up yet to really track and trace where everything is coming from. And when you have a large supplier and you buy a whole bunch of spot buys from different farms, you need to know that then when you're homogenizing and mixing all of these products together, that all of those are included in that COA of your final product, so that we know, if it's grown with heavy pesticides or metals or whatever it is, we can go back to the solution of the source of where it came from. Anyways, I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah, there's a couple more questions on here for you.
Yeah.
Do you do THC? Oh, sorry, I was just going to read it real quick. Do you do THC field tests weekly with your grows to monitor your levels to make adjustments in the shape of final levels?
So yes and no. Our first year, no. This year, yes. And it's also about the pattern of how we're testing versus last year, when we were just kind of going to the side of the field, or to an access point that made sense. We also don't do the tests in the same place each week. And so our goal is to be able to have a consistent weekly kind of Gantt chart of where our THC levels are, and so that we know when to take it off of the field. So great question.
Awesome. How do you feel about all of these new rules as to the THCA total THC? And I see that there are a lot of hemp farms coming and tested hot this year.
Yeah, and for Oregon law pushed back, rather than going with the new total THC, they are going to still use the Delta 9. And so we're happy about that. There is a place for total THC, but it's such a myopic view. You're not able to really support the farmer, and when scenarios for one reason or another are out of the farmer's hand at a certain point. And so I personally think that the Delta 9 needs to be the testing, the acceptable testing that we use. But at the same time, you can still make total THC work. It's just a little bit more of a process. So,
yeah. And again, if your field does go hot, do you have to? Can you keep it, or do you have to basically mow it down?
No, I think that there's ways that you can mitigate that. I mean, what we do right now is, let's say you take a hot THC and blend it with a low batch of like biomass that didn't perform as well as you wanted it to. I mean, you can come up with an average in your crude that's acceptable, and then say you're doing a tea-free distillate, just pull out the THC and you're just fine. But you're ultimately using your flowers and your leaves to be able to get the biomass performing at a higher CBD and a better rate. So again, we're trying to mix it in that case, where we won't sell it as flower when it becomes hot, but we can mix it with some of our biomass to be able to see if we can get a better outcome with the biomass and crude.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know David Rockwood. He's got a technology that monitors crops' health and stress level to grow weekly via 3 different satellite imaging in the grounds. When we talk, him and I have spoken a lot about this, and I'm curious, especially on the industrial or outdoor grows, but now he also services the big greenhouses. I'm curious about, I guess, compared to like what you said, last year's testing methods compared to this year's testing methods versus different employees or people coming in and where they're testing on the plant. Technology here, I think, is another huge opportunity to provide resources to our farmers and really get them support.
Yeah.
If that's the right word, right?
Yeah, and I would tell David that he has got a tiger by the tail, so to speak, because if you can help farmers understand, where their product is at and give that type of clarity, whether it be through drones, satellite imagery, there's quite a bit of technology that's coming that can even see a plant as it gets hot and as it starts to herm and pull it right out of the field. So technology is going to have a major play in this, and it's a huge part of the future of the industry. For us, adaptation is one of the biggest challenges to any business, but we use a product called Fusionware. It's already on the farm, and so it's natural to be able to have that type of plotting already put into the fields that we use as hemp. We do a crop rotation, so again, many of that measuring is already in place. And so in certain ways, farmers are going to probably use what they've used in the past, but how do you iterate it and make it better? And so I'd love to have a conversation with David. At the same time, we're going to utilize what the farm is currently using for their other products, because we've gone through the process of getting it acceptable for our buyers and for the approvals. And I would just say that if David can connect through the technology to the big buyers and making it a verification as part of the process, then he's going to have distribution like crazy, because the farmer isn't always going to be your tech expert. And so they're going to rely on whatever is going to help them sell the most. And so specifically in Fusionware, what we're utilizing, it's based on what's already accepted by the buyers and the farmer. So, but yeah, I'd love to talk to David.
Yeah, he's got some incredible information. I'm really curious and excited to use it to help show the carbon footprint around crop compared to other crops. Or being able to see One thing that I really like is, in a large field, being able to identify where a water line broke before you actually see damage to the crop.
Yeah.
Right? Things like that. That's what we do. We developed our own agricultural intelligence tool to manage these images. So pretty cool. Well, I'm excited. So let me tell you, this is a perfect example of what I want to do. I'd love to start interviewing and actually making these connections and recording them, right? To be able to have a discussion with a farmer that's dealing with hands-on, and especially somebody that is tech savvy like yourself, that's dealing hands-on with these issues, and being able to discuss with somebody that has a potential solution or is developing and building these solutions. So I'd love to move forward with, I don't know if I do it once a week or every other week, but having two people on air like you and David and actually videoing and discussing it. I think it would be just one more thing I want to add to our live interviews, because I think, we're having somebody in the medical side or someone in the banking side or money and finance side that's interested in putting a facility together and really letting them unfold some of these pieces.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're an expert with, is the collaboration, and then not only the collaboration itself, but getting it into a format where other people can consume it later, because we all need to be educated, and you don't know what you don't know. And rather than going through and having all of the failures that we had in year one and now year two, I'm an open book to say, don't do this and maybe do that. But factors are also situational, but if we're going to be good business owners and good stewards of what we have, then we need to make the adjustments based on what we have available to us. So
yeah, absolutely. So real quick, I've got to give Tim a shout out. Tim, I want you to come on and I want you to chat. I actually need to send you a link. I looked for your phone number yesterday so you could send us a picture. He was in a field yesterday and I wanted to get him on so he could show it to us live, but I didn't have his phone number available and too much going on. So no, Tim, but I definitely want you to. You're on my to-do list to reach out. So don't worry.
Right. Something interesting David just put in here, that they are working on a indoor greenhouse version of their technology. I think that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, can I ask a question to David? With this development, is it going to fit into current greenhouses because you've got so many versions and so many different ways in which farmers have done greenhouses, or is it going to be also into a preferred greenhouse that kind of meets the specs that you're developing for the solution?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I think I know the answer to it, and I think that it's for lots of different greenhouses. Could be used in multiple greenhouses, but
yeah, I would hope, because I mean, again, you've got to think there's so many farmers that already have a greenhouse, and based on technology, if it's a solution that exists for current greenhouses, whatever the size, format, much better distribution than something that has to be tied to a. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
There we go. There's the answer to that. Yes, we install a hyperspectral camera. Cool.
Excellent.
Well, and this came up that I was really fascinated about. Even on the industrial hemp growth in Alaska, it has to be an indoor grow over in Alaska, and so. When we talk about representation and my passion of being able to connect people and build relationships and really move this supply chain along, it's been eye-opening to me the level of representation that's needed in each region or area or vertical, right? That Oregon does not need the same representation as Utah, and Utah is not the same as the Midwest, and the Midwest is nowhere close to Alaska, right? We're all under the same umbrella of what's legal on the federal side for hemp, but it's not. It's so different. And even just like you said, seeds and genetics and the way it grows and how much you can grow in the water or transportation or, I can't imagine where mills, that we'll have a whole bunch of fabric mills anywhere but the Midwest where they used to be, right? And so, yeah, it's just everybody needs, every vertical and every piece of this industry needs some strong representation, and each it has a different tweak and a different need that's not the same as other areas.
Yeah.
So let's see what else Dave had to say. Dave said, oh, let's see. Yes, we installed a camera.
And then you just followed up.
To give, but we run through all AI software.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll introduce you. I'd love to have you guys on. I've got to figure out how I can invite people on here last minute.
Yeah, we need to figure out how to get people to, so we could send the link. Well, probably just send them the link, and then they could hurry and just click on the link and come on.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to do. I'm just not smart enough to do that. But how can we help you, Scott? What can we do to help move things forward for you and for Evan and your company as an organization and as a community, you know, within Utah or globally, nationally?
Well, I think it starts with what you're already doing. I mean, connecting people who can do business or create enterprise or create value is always, I think, it eventually has to be in existence for businesses to thrive within that type of an industry. So again, what you're doing is already, you know, down that path. I would just say that one of my biggest pet peeves in the industry is just the lack of sophistication of like just simple documents and simple, like, you do what you say you're going to do. And that's one of the things that I think if there's one thing that I could request broadly to all of the people in the hemp space is you either can or you can't. But if you're not the person that has the product or you're representing the product, oftentimes there's so much noise and so much distraction based on everybody knowing about a deal and trying to broker it. And, you know, the first person who gets to market is able to do that deal. I think it actually hurts the farmers, and I think it actually hurts the industry when so many people are just trying to be, you know, jumping in and taking a opportunity. And again, I'm an opportunist. I'm not criticizing a person who's going to jump on an opportunity and run with it, but I would just say, you know, simple principles that exist in every other industry, I would wish exist more in this industry. And so I would just say that it's our responsibility, being a part of this collective, to raise the bar of people whom are going to do what they say that they're going to do and who are going to follow through. If you can't, you can't. I mean, I don't think anybody is going to criticize the fact that, you know, you tried and you couldn't pull something together, but it's better knowing that up front than when you get down the road and you've done all of this transfer back and forth of C of A's and of documentation and, you know, even proof of funds. It's just, there's some things within the industry that definitely need to change, but it's not going to change unless we start doing it here first. And so that's what I would say, is just represent who we are and not something that we're not. So, I mean, again, that's more of me being on a soapbox, and I recognize that. But I've just dealt with so many scenarios where it's like, we've got something real here, and then after a week or two, you find out it's actually not real. And it was just something that, you know, somebody had hoped would happen or was trying to make happen. So, again, that's just 2 cents.
Well, I think this is something that comes up. Good advice for anybody that's looking to get into this green rush, right? Is there's still a lot of broken in the industry. Okay. We're moving it from a black market or a illegal market into a legal market that's now regulated, and the regulations have to change so that we can bring it in. And, you know, like in that video that Tim recommended, you know, he says something like it's an $8 billion industry or $80 billion industry and no banks. You know, that's a lot of money moving in duffel bags across the streets, you know, in the back of our cars, or stored in storage units, or buried in under the ground, whatever it is, right? But understanding that and And as this becomes a more legitimate industry, or now that it is a legitimate industry, we have to start acting that way. And if you're going to be in business, you have to follow the rules. And like you said, simple contracts and doing what you said you're going to do. One thing we're passionate about is, PACA does not support the cannabis industry or hemp industry at all. And those are common insurances that cover our farmers, that allow, when those bad deals are made, for us to go after. If I make a commitment to sell 12,000 pounds of tomatoes and you last minute tear up the contract, you're sweet. She's so cute. Tear up the contract, then there's insurance for me, right? In the cannabis and hemp space, there is not that insurance. There is no coverage. And so until we collectively put those in place and stop acting, and with the influx of the market, I see where it's happening. Like you said, Scott, if we have a buyer that comes in and commits to buying all of your flour for $300 a pound, and then the market falls out and now it's not $50 a pound for, say, well, okay, well, he doesn't have to do a contract. He doesn't have to follow through because there's no security. And that's it's a real concern, and it's a real explanation, I guess, or something to identify when we talk about how many people lost last year. And a lot of it is not just their lack of skill or mistake. There was a lot of broken in the industry, and a lot of people committed where they could not fulfill. And that kind of stuff has to stop, right? We have to have something in place, just like the Green Book, that vets people, that lets everybody know where product is, what type of business they're in. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox now. So I support you, Scott, and I agree with you. And it's something we talk a lot about too, is our code of conduct and our ethics and, our value and what we stand for. And that even comes down to, please don't show up to one of my events and light up a joint. Please don't do it. I support you smoking. I do not support you smoking in a professional establishment. Same thing.
Yeah. And Maddie, Dawn just chimed in here. She said that there are some states that will enforce those contracts. So it's moving. It's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, and I think that, partnering, Dawn is a phenomenal attorney also and is very passionate about the industry. And when you're building your team, having team members that understand those contracts, right? That it's not just hey, I've got all this money, right? It's the smart money concept and being smart with who your team is and what are your real end goals? Are you in this for a quick grab? Or are you really in it for the long game? And it's really a long play. So anyways, thanks for talking with us about everything I'm passionate about.
No, thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
So go ahead.
I was going to say one last thing. David asked if you know who GrowFit in Salt Lake is. He just added that they do the HVAC and then they do the plant analysis. I haven't personally heard of GrowFit. Have you, Mandy?
No. I'm going to have to look up. Shout out to them. Hopefully he can tag us, or I see he added the link here too for us. We'll look into it. But if you need anything else, Scott, please let me know. We are scheduling another shooting event out in September, the first Thursday in September, for anybody in our group, or Utah CBD Collective. And so I'm really excited to be out there again. I'd love to see you out there. I, of course, invite you out there. And then if there's anything we can do, either for success in education or for METT, don't hesitate to holler. I'd love to meet the rest of your team as well. I keep seeing Evan and sending him all of our invites, but I get lucky enough to have you on the call. So
one day.
And I'll speak for Evan in this scenario. He's wrapping up a transaction right now with Vivint Solar. So he's swamped on the legal side and then also the transition of operations. So but we'll all get together.
I love it. Okay, well, don't hesitate to holler if you need anything. And other than that, thank you very much, you guys, for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Thank
See you later, Scott.
See ya.
Well, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, sorry again. I was 30 minutes late.
Oh, no big deal. Yeah,
it actually stresses me, to be honest. When I'm on a call and I can't get off of it, and I know I've got something else going, it stresses me. So
I understand. Well, it's nice thing about this is it is that casual. That's the piece of the casual that I enjoy is one, it's easier for our guests, and two,
Yeah.
it's a lot of work putting on a live hour every day. Even if it's just in the preparation of finding people to come on and interview. And I said the other day, I said, it's a lot of work. And somebody said, why? It's 1 hour. I was like, well, that's not the hard part. The other stuff.
It's getting people on.
And when somebody says, hey, I've got time at 10 o'clock on Wednesday, can we meet? And I'm like, nope, not until afternoon. It takes up my morning. So anyways, I love it. It's my favorite part of my day. But are you coming to town, or are we meeting over Zoom later today?
I was thinking over Zoom.
Perfect. Okay, I'll be here.
Perfect.
All right. Okay,
Sounds
thank
good.
you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay, bye.